Hello, everybody. My name is Dan Kornhauser,
And I'm Sam Teets.
and thank you guys for tuning in for another edition of the NFL Draft Show here on The Grueling Truth, where legends speak. Before we get going, I want to let you guys know that we're brought to you by betting.net. Betting.net is your best bet for sportsbook and casino sites, so head on over to betting.net. So, Sam, the NFL Draft season is, I guess, officially here. And we just went through the Senior Bowl. A lot of stuff went down. We got a lot to talk about, and we have a little bit of time to talk about it. And so let's jump right into it. Everyone wants to hear about this position. This is where the money is made. Girls like quarterbacks. Let's go over some quarterbacks, dude. I think it was a very interesting week for the quarterbacks in the Senior Bowl. I don't think anybody really stood out. Nobody really ran ahead of the pack. But these guys had pretty solid performances in their own rights from day to day.
I don't know if I go that far. I'm gonna turn to one of those guys who's gonna be very pessimistic about this group the entire way moving forward. I think.
Oh boy.
There were some moments certainly, but here's the thing: I missed most of day one. I'd actually go back and rewatch it. I'm still rewatching day one for practice. I got in on day two, and if you saw the weather conditions on day two, it was a rainy, foggy mess.
Mm-hmm.
And so were the quarterbacks for most of the day too. It was not a great showing. So I got in maybe I just jumped in on the wrong day, but I got in. That was my first time seeing them at the Senior Bowl. And I saw them on day three, obviously, and I saw them during the actual game itself. And I don't know, man. I'm not feeling too good about this group. I understand there's going to be some risers here. I understand all the hype now as Malik Willis is probably going to go in the first round, maybe even be QB1. I understand that Mike Tomlin and the GM are right there staring him down for part of the practice, but I don't want to touch one of these guys with a 10-foot pole in the top 16 picks. I really don't want to.
See, for me, it was ugly in the beginning of the week, but each one of these guys stood out in their own right as the week went on, and they all had their moments in practice. And I mean, Kenny Pickett is what he is, okay? He is poised. He is experienced. He's played a lot of football in college, starting football in college. So that's the safe route.
Yeah.
You kind of expect him to, out of all these guys, be the one who you plug in right away. Not necessarily with high expectations that he's going to run away with it, but at least he won't be worse than what you already have if you're Washington, Carolina, the Giants, etc. Pittsburgh. There's a lot of teams that need QB. So a guy like Kenny Pickett can fit for a lot of them. But besides him, Willis did his thing. He showed he's got the physical talent. That was never a question. And it was nice to see how he worked against elite talent. That was one of the biggest questions, was his level of competition. Liberty didn't really play a powerhouse schedule, and he struggled at times during the season. But, I mean, with Willis, you see the physical talent, and it jumped out this week, and it's impressive. I can see where coach might fall in love with this guy.
Well, yeah, and you saw there was a play, I think, right before halftime of the actual game itself where he's scrambling around, he's getting chased out of the pocket, and he gets down to like the 5-yard line. And he's starting like the 30-yard line. And he's able to do these things where he's able to run through secondaries and create those yards. And he really, watching the game, I can't remember if he was sacked or not. But the defensive ends for most of this game were feasting. They were getting to the backfield quite frequently.
Mm-hmm.
And with Malik Willis, he was able to move outside. He was able to roll outside, throw the ball away. And that's things that you really don't get with Carson Strong, Bailey Zappi. Kenny Pickett can move. I think we've seen Kenny Pickett do that before, but not to the same extent as Malik Willis, where he's this massive threat with his legs. So I think Willis did help himself out. Overall, compared to everyone else in the group, I think he probably had the most standout performance throughout the week. Obviously, he has the tremendous arm talent. Most of these guys have terrific arms. Puts a lot of velocity on the ball. And I think he stood out the most in the final 2 days of practice, I would say. Because in the second day 2 when it was rainy, he looked fine to me. He was in the second group where it wasn't as bad the conditions. And he came out on day 3, it was pretty solid as well. And there were a bunch of guys throughout the week that I said, like, I don't know if it's him standing out so much as with the other guys just kind of struggling a little bit to me. But Malik Willis is definitely the biggest riser of the quarterbacks in this situation. Kenny Pickett is kind of like your steady Eddie kind of guy. Like he's just very consistent.
Mm-hmm.
My concerns with him would be day 2. When I was watching that, I mean, he started out probably as the most accurate QB in the group, and it just got more inaccurate as the day went on. He muffed the snap under center. Most of these guys, to be frank, aren't very comfortable being under center yet, and that's kind of obvious. A lot of them played in shotgun offenses in college, so it's not a surprise. But he muffed the snap under center, and that was his fault. And again, I just think day 2 does kind of worry me. He played in Pittsburgh, so he's been in bad weather before.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like this is his first exposure to bad weather, but day 2, him, Carson Strong, I was really worried about those 2 guys. They did not look good to me.
Well, yeah, it's nice to bring up Carson Strong because Strong and Zappe actually were the 2 guys, like you said, that stood out for me as well. Zappe, for me, it was a lack of arm strength. He just didn't look quite right with the zip on his balls. Giggity. He was accurate. He did show good timing, and he had good moments, but it wasn't something that stood out. For me, this just solidified that he was getting a little too much love coming out of the season. People were riding the stats, and he had some nice film, but it's this week showed that Zappe's not quite right. He's not on the level of these other guys. That's not to say that he can't be something relevant in the NFL, a potential starter, in a good situation, good system. But he might be just a high level backup type, which is fine. There's place for that. That's a second, third round pick.
Yeah, you can make a lot of money doing that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Guys make careers as backups, make millions of dollars as backups. That's not a bad place to be. And maybe he's a little better than that, but he didn't stand out like the rest of these guys did. Strong didn't either. Strong's one of those guys. He's got the size. He's got the arm. He can zip the ball. And he's another one with the talent, but the knee issue is something that people are going to scrutinize. It's a potential career-threatening injury if it gets any worse. And he's totally immobile. That's just the way it is. And the potential is there for these guys. I'm not as pessimistic. Which is weird because normally I am that.
Yeah, usually it's reverse.
I am the harsh critic, and nothing really impresses me. I've said that before, but I don't know. You see the talent with these guys. As I'm looking at the stats, I'm looking at my list, and you see the talent with these guys for different things. And like Ritter, for example, Ritter got better as the week progressed. He struggled early on, but as the week got further in, and he kept getting these reps with these guys, he got more comfortable. His accuracy was there. And he did show he can work through his progressions. Sam Howell, his physicality was never a question. Good size, great arm, one of the best arms in this class. And the mobility is a plus. He showed that he could adapt to the system. The lack of playing in a pro-style offense does hurt him, but he seemed to be working through the offense pretty well for all things considered. And he's another one. Like, he came into the year as a potential QB1 in this class, fell off a little bit. We know the weapons, the offensive talent that left that team. It was him and nobody else had to carry it. We're all both running backs. It's ugly. And he did the best that he could, and his game developed a bit differently than we maybe even thought possible. But all these guys, save Zappe, are going to be taken in the top 2 rounds. I mean, Carson Strong maybe drops to the 3rd.
He's the one who, on the medicals and some stuff. I'll be honest, Carson Strong, I went in thinking this guy could be a good pick for Pittsburgh in day 2, like day 2, second round.
Yeah.
I can't see him taking me. Even if the knee checks out. What I saw on day 2 is his head was dropping. He was shaking his head consistently. He was so inaccurate on day 2. And he never really rebounded on day 3. And he threw an interception in the game itself to Alontae Taylor, where Taylor was beat down the sideline by the receiver, and he underthrew the ball.
Yep.
And then Zappe, to mention Zappe, I think Zappe honestly might have the prettiest deep balls in this class. Like, surprisingly, he floats it and he just kind of like drops in. That only works a certain range, and he missed. Like I said, he's got a bunch of other problems. The arm strength, some stuff in the middle he missed, but he threw an interception in the game as well, where he basically floated the ball. But he drive it, you power it in like with the speed that Malik Willis has or the arm that Carson Strong has. You get it right to the receiver. It's a potential touchdown. He floats the ball, and JT Woods from the other side of the field comes like sprinting onto the screen, jumps the route, and gets an interception. Because I don't think he has the power to drive the ball. Sam Howell has the power to drive the ball. That's something he showed this week. I know some people are actually concerned about his ability just to put the velocity and speed on in shorter routes. I think he showed that. My concern with him, the footwork is a little bit all over the place. him and Malik Willis need to clean up their
Mhm.
reads. So
Yep.
they were even on day 3 in practice. They were still missing some receivers who were open in the red zone drills and the team drills. So that's a concern they have to adapt to going forward. And that's something experience will fix, I believe. They just don't have that experience yet. As far as Desmond Ridder, I don't really have anything negative to say about Desmond Ridder. I think he had some inaccuracies early in the week, and he cleaned that up, got better as the week progressed, and he probably ends up being QB2 or QB3 if we're grading their overall performances, which I thought was pretty good for him. I think he had a good showing, honestly. And then, like Kenny Pickett, like I said, just kind of like a steady guy. Like he's exactly what you expected him to be for the most part.
Mhm.
So I don't know. It's hard. I'll admit this. I am not great at judging quarterbacks. I'm not. But because of that, I am very worried about potentially picking one. Because Pittsburgh tends to just project and tell everyone who they want to pick, and they were staring at Malik Willis for so long this week that I am a little bit worried it's going to be quarterback. And as I mentioned, all these guys have kind of issues. Like they might have all been QB6 last year, and that's what worries me.
That's a thing, but I think that'll be more talking about the talent of last year's class more so than these guys and how bad they might or might not be. And when you were talking about Willis, you mentioned his footwork, and yes, that's immediately something that stood out. And I read something over the weekend that someone likened his situation to a Trey Lance type situation. Maybe not to that level because Lance was crazy in college and his tape 2019 was amazing, but similar in that he's a small school guy, tons of physical talent, can throw the ball on the run, has a pretty pass, has the arm, has the athleticism you look for in today's NFL quarterback. And, he'll need some work. He's probably going to have to sit for at the very least a year, maybe 2, if you have that opportunity to sit him for a couple of years behind some grizzled vet. I don't know, maybe Matt Ryan, the Falcons take him in the top of the 2nd round or something like that, something along those lines. I wouldn't want him starting or in the potential to start in, say, like Washington or even Pittsburgh. Like
Pittsburgh, exactly.
I don't know. And I was hearing rumors that maybe the Lions might be into him. And if they want him at the top of the 1st round, they should trade back. They already are on thin ice with me. If Malik Willis is the pick 2nd overall, there's only so much abuse that a man can take. Okay, there's only so much abuse that I can take from those that I love, and my team is one of those that I love, and they abuse me, and I hate them, and I hate it every offseason, no matter how.
Let me ask you this then: if you could pick wherever you wanted to in the draft, what's the earliest time you want the Lions to take a quarterback? Because for me,
top of the 2nd.
Top of the 2nd? Yeah, that's about where I'm at.
I wouldn't mind them taking. I know Pickett, Willis, Corral, those guys might be off the board. I wouldn't mind Howell at the top of the 2nd because if he's right, awesome. If not, we'll be butt again and we'll be in contention.
Yeah, you'll be right back at the top of the draft all over again.
5 pick next year, and we'll have much more options up top. Even if it's not a superstar quarterback, it could be a superstar edge rusher or whatever. So, that's the highest I'm going. Any of this nonsense of taking Willis or any quarterback in the top 2, 3, top 5 would disgust me. For another team, cool, but the Lions, I'd be absolutely repulsed.
It's funny you mentioned Corral because someone, I forget who it was, but someone on social media said that some executive or scout talked to him and said the QB who won this week was Matt Corral because he didn't show up, he didn't have to show out, and really, these guys were not I'm not saying these guys were horrible. I won't say that, but we realize Zappy's limitations. Carson Strong to me just fell off a cliff. If Willis had the best week, that's cool, but to me, he's still going to be like a 2nd round grade for me at most, like in the 40s, maybe the 30s. It's not like I feel great about this class, and I think this just proved you might feel good about Malik Willis compared to the rest of this group, but in the perspective of the larger picture of history, the past 5 draft classes for quarterbacks or something like that, you do not like this group. And I think that's pretty obvious that someone is going to probably take Kenny Pickett in the 1st round. Someone's going to take Malik Willis in the 1st round. I can almost guarantee it. And someone will probably take Sam Howell in the 1st round. But that doesn't make it a great decision. So I think I am being a little pessimistic, admittedly. But I think this group is it's really a second-round group. It really is in terms of value. If you're not taking positional value into account, this is really a group of second-round kind of guys.
And with that in mind, talking about Corral being bumped up a little bit because he just didn't show up and didn't have his flaws displayed openly for the whole league compared to these other guys. With that in mind, I think we're at that point. Let's rank these quarterbacks. All right. All we have left pretty much is the scouting combine, interviews, pro day, which means very little at this point. So we should have a pretty good idea of where these guys sit right now. I mean, at this point of the season, we're post Senior Bowl. Draft boards should be like 80% solidified at this point, 85% solidified at this point. Maybe not placements overall or whatever, but like I have a good idea on a bunch of different position groups and what my big board's coming together and my draft chart show coming together. So with that in mind, let's rank these quarterbacks, all right? Pickett, Willis, Corral, Howell, Ritter, Strong, Zappy. 1 through 7. Let's do it. Hit us off. What is your chart going to look like? I'm so excited.
I'm still going to keep Pickett at 1. I am. I mean, it's the boring pick, but like I said, he's the steady hand of the group. Like, is there a possibility for him in a bad weather game to absolutely collapse? Sure. But depending on where he's going to end up, he could be playing in a dome for all we know. So that might not affect him that much at all. To me, he is the steady man of the group. He's not going to commit many turnovers. He's going to keep your offense on track. And like you say, his ceiling's probably a Derek Carr kind of player, which is not world-changing, not franchise-saving, but still not bad at all. I mean, all things considered. And his floor, is probably in the Jimmy Garoppolo range, but not like turning the ball over like Garoppolo, but probably that range of quarterback, like the 20s, that kind of area in general. And again, that's still not horrible. I mean, this is kind of guy with a decently high floor and decently like mid-class ceiling. So I'm going to keep him at 1.
All right. I'm going to keep Matt Corral as my number 1.
Yeah, really.
I'm going to do it. I like his tape. Okay, the tape speaks for itself. He's got the talent. He did what he did in the SEC, which has to matter. And it's not one of those where you look at a guy says, oh, it's a lot of easy, reads that any quarterback could make these little dump off throws and screens and bubble screens and slants and easy little passes that get the ball out of his hand quick. This kid was making plays. He stands in the pocket. He moves around when necessary. And yes, he's slight. Yes, he needs work going through his progressions. But in a draft class where there is no clear-cut number 1, I'm not worried about his injury at all that he suffered at the end of the season. I see no reason why I should move him, especially after this weekend where for me, as you said, as I've said, has been widely discussed, none of these guys stood out. Maybe I change that a little bit because this is like, 1A, 1B, 1C type of thing. And this is one of those years. It's ugly. And it's going to be what we're going to see on draft day. It's going to be what teams actually want in their quarterback. What do they see in these guys? Someone's going to look at Malik Willis and think that's a poor man's Lamar Jackson. Okay, I'm not saying that he is Lamar Jackson athleticism. I'm not saying he's that sort of dynamic athlete. Okay, because Lamar is one of the best athletes in the whole league, regardless of position. So I'm not talking about that level, but some coach, some general manager is going to look at this kid and say, you know what? Yeah, he throws some picks. Yeah, his footwork's ugly, but we got a good offensive coordinator. We got a good head coach. We got a good system. We'll work with it. So I could see Willis rising out of all of these guys. I could see Willis making the biggest jump. But I'm going to go Corral number 1. Give me the rest of your rankings.
The rest of them? All right. Number 2 for me. I jump back and forth because it really is number 2 for me is either Corral or it's Willis. I'm going to just stick with Willis just for the sake of this because I think he has the highest ceiling to me of the QBs in this draft. And if you're drafting a QB and you're drafting him towards the first round, maybe you want a franchise-saving quarterback, someone that can really change your franchise around. To me, guys like Pickett and Corral are kind of these mid-tier guys. Willis is the one with the potential to be the best out of this group. So I have Willis at 2. Not because he's what he is right now, but because of what he can become. So Willis, for me, is my QB2. Corral is QB3. I think he cleaned up a lot of the issues he had in 2020. He had all the turnovers. He had like a 5-interception game. He really turned that back this year. It was much more conservative, not conservative football, much more protective of the football. Looked like the offense was running a lot smoother. Ole Miss had some really good games. He performed well against some good teams. Did not have like the breakdowns he had in the previous year. So Corral for me is my QB3 as of right now. And a little bit is because I didn't get to see him. Like if he comes out in the combine and throws, I might feel a little bit better about him. I might boot him up to 2. But I've seen all these guys right now except for Corral in that kind of isolated situation of the Senior Bowl. So that does possibly knock him down a little bit. My QB4 after this weekend, I'm probably going to go with Desmond Ridder because Desmond Ridder to me was not great in day 1, but he got better throughout the week. And I do think he has the arm. He's got the experience, obviously. He's played against some high-caliber teams in the past. I don't think he was particularly good against Alabama or any of the top schools he played. But compared to the other quarterbacks in this class, I'm so far out on Carson Strong right now that I'll go with Desmond Ridder here. Actually, wait, no, I'm sorry. I'm messing up. I'm sorry. Sam Howell will go above Desmond Ridder for me. Barely. It's a thin line.
So
because I am concerned about the footwork with Howell. And there's some plays he makes that just worry me. It might just be the fact that he doesn't have a chance to sit down and play a real NFL offense yet. And he can flip that around in the course of 6 months. But there are some concerns with Howell. I do have Howell as my QB4, I guess, is Sam Howell. And QB5 would be Ridder for all the reasons I talked about. Sam Howell, me again, a guy who I like quite a bit. I was a huge Sam Howell fan in college, even though I'm a Clemson fan, but I got to see him almost beat Clemson, so I do have a lot of respect for him in this game. I love the toughness he showed, the ability to create yards after contact with his more compact frame. It's something that's kind of unique for a player of his size and build. So Sam Howell, QB4, QB5, Desmond Ridder, and it leaves 6 and 7. 6 for me is Carson Strong just because of the physicality, the arm strength. He has a higher ceiling than Zappe because he can do more. And I do like what he was able to do on the offense with Nevada, some things he was able to set up. So he did have a lot of control in the offense at the offensive line, or at the line of scrimmage in that offense. That didn't really show up, though, in the Senior Bowl. Actually, I think he had the most trouble of anyone getting the plays called in the huddle, frankly. When I was watching the practices, he had to have the coach step in quite a bit and help him out with that, which surprised me a little bit, and not in a good way. And then Zappe on the bottom just because I think we saw what he is. He's a round 3, round 4 QB.
So your rankings were actually pretty easy because that's how you ranked them is exactly how I wrote them down. So that's pretty cool. I had to do very little work there. Now for me with Matt Corral, my number 1 QB for now, I'm gonna go with Kenny Pickett 2. I'm gonna go with Malik Willis 3, Sam Howell 4, Ridder 5, Strong 6, and Zappe 7. So very similar at the tail end. We did flip-flop around our top 3. And Howell, honestly, I was thinking to put Howell 3. I really like Howell. I don't know why he's come on to me lately. I don't know what I saw this week that I liked, but I don't know, something about him. I wouldn't mind taking a shot at him in the second round, top of the second round if he's available. Now, before we move on to our little mock draft Monday thing for the Senior Bowl, how many quarterbacks do you see getting drafted in the first round?
3. I'll say 3. I mean, there's the issue is there's a bunch of teams who need quarterbacks this year. Tampa Bay now being one towards the back end of the first round. It's just a question of, is Pittsburgh crazy enough to go in to the first round and pass on a QB and let Mason Rudolph ride and be the starter projected going to next year? How does Tampa Bay feel about Kyle Trask? I think it's a little bit up in the air with those kind of teams. Will Atlanta pick the heir to Matt Ryan? Who knows? What about Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers? It's a lot of question marks. But right now, I'm going to say 3. There could be 4. I can't imagine 5. That'd be insane. Yeah, I think it's going to be on the lower side, so 3 or 4 for me.
Yeah, Ridder, Strong, Zappe, none of those guys are first rounders. Sam Howell's the only borderline for me. Just to be different, I'm going to say 4 because I think there's a strong possibility that if Howell interviews well, that he could very well rise to the back end of the first round. And honestly, there's definitely teams out there that like Desmond Ridder. You know, there's teams out there that see his skill set and see something that they can work with because all these guys, like I said earlier, they have talent and it's there. You see it. It's just inconsistent for different reasons, and a lot of it will be fit and team around them and so on and so forth. But before we move on, I want to remind everyone that your top sportsbook comparison site is betting.net, and betting.net offers extensive reviews on the best sportsbooks out there. So head on over to betting.net. And now, it is Monday. Not quite a mock draft Monday, but close enough because it's a special occasion. It's the Senior Bowl. It's done. And now we're going to do a little mini mock draft, okay? We're going to do our top 3 performers of this week, the game, whatever. But our top 3 guys, we're going to ping pong these so we don't, one person doesn't cock block the other and take all of his picks right off the bat. So, Sam, why don't you start us off? You have the first pick. Give me your first standout of the week.
All right, my first standout of the week. Someone who I think is going to be highly undervalued in this draft class, but I think will still be very impactful. There were a lot of interior defense line that really made names for himself this weekend. I want to talk about Travis Jones from Uconn, one of the few players from Uconn who's going to get drafted this year. They're really pitching him as a nose tackle, and I can see why. He's 6'4", 326 pounds, and he just eats up so much space in the run game. I don't know if I like him to play a traditional nose tackle role. When we talk about someone like Jordan Davis, that to me is a traditional nose tackle. It's a 2-down nose tackle.
Mm-hmm.
I look at Travis Jones and the way he moves downfield, his mobility, and his ability to kind of just stay on the field for longer periods of time. This guy might be like that rare breed that's able to stay out there and play 3 downs. I genuinely think Travis Jones is going to get 3-down assignments. I think you can play him that way because I think he applies enough pressure up the middle that you can leave him on the field for extended periods of time. I think he's physically fit enough where he can do that as well. This is a guy who, instead of playing 500, 600 snaps, can play 600 to 750 snaps for you a year. I think that's highly valuable for someone like Travis Jones, and I love what he was able to do in the one-on-ones. You saw situations where he used excellent leverage. His hands are very powerful. You can tell that he just kind of throws guys around with them. He runs through a lot of offensive linemen, and when his initial rush kind of stopped, he'd use his hands to really grab and basically flip around centers when he's lining up against them. He basically beat the snot out of almost every center he faced this weekend, just tossing them around. And I don't think he's going to be like a sack artist by any means, but I think he'll get more pressure. Talking about maybe if Jordan Davis gets you 14 pressures a year, I think Travis Jones is going to get you 28 to 30 pressures a year. That's how I view him right now.
All right. I mean, you're not wrong. Travis Jones had a fantastic practice week. And where do you see him going at this point post Senior Bowl? Where do you see his draft stock round wise?
I think second round. And it's going to be hard to say because there are going to be other defensive tackles I don't want to mention because I don't want to steal your thunder. There were other DTs we saw this weekend who were extremely talented, who might push him back just because of how talented the interior defensive line class is right now.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're valuing just in a bubble, I think it's second round kind of guy.
All right, perfect. So that's your first pick. I'm going to stay on the defensive side. I'm going to go with Jermaine Johnson of Florida State, edge rusher, 6'4", 260, long arms, great wingspan, just lengthy, athletic, explosive, absolutely dominant. And he solidified a first round spot. I don't know if I'm going to give him a first round grade because I am very stingy with those. I've only at most ever given like 20 or so first round grades in any given draft. And that's not to say, obviously, just for everyone watching and listening, that doesn't mean that I think that, there's no players worth that pay. I'm just saying teams don't have 32 first round grades. Every draft board for the NFL, all these teams have different rankings and different systems and whatever for their draft boards, but it also depends on where they're picking. So a team picking in the back end of the first round might leave some guys at the top off just because they know they're not going to be there. So they might only have like 10 guys with first round grades because those are probably 10 guys that will be in that draft range for them. But on average, I think if I remember correctly, on any given year, teams average like between 13 and 16 first round grades, depending on where they're slotted. So I work with that in mind. Mine is normally at most like 20. So I'm not sure if I'm going to give him a first round grade, but he had a great week of practice and he absolutely solidified his place in that first round conversation.
Yeah, I think I actually saw him appear in a mock draft today at number 10 overall. So he's getting up there. He's going to probably, people are having to challenge George Karlaftis. It's really going to come down to the combine numbers, I'm sure, at this point. But people are really starting to move him up quite a bit.
Getting on that train. So who's your second pick?
Well, I'll stick with edge rushers. I'll stick with Kingsley Enagbare from South Carolina. This is a guy who I've had projected as a top 64-ish player now for most of my entire season, writing these mock drafts, writing out these big boards. I've had him up there for quite a while. He's 6'3", 261 pounds is what he measured at the Senior Bowl. 35-inch arms, and to give you a comparison for that, the only players at the Shrine Bowl or the Senior Bowl who had longer arms than Nagbury on defense were, I can't say these names. Periana Winfrey was one of them. Otito Bonilla, I believe he's the defensive tackle from UCLA, and then Ayomia Uwazurike is from, I think, Minnesota, I believe. He's a bit of a bigger edge rusher. I can't say those names, but those were the only three defensive players from the Shrine Bowl or the Senior Bowl with longer arms than Kingsley Nagbury. And you can see it. I mean, he had some plays against in the one-on-ones where he basically put his one arm up near like the collarbone of the offensive tackle and basically one arm bull rushed the guy into the backfield. That's pretty darn impressive for an edge rusher who's like 260 pounds. So I have him rising quite a bit. I would like to see him improve a little bit on he doesn't have a great bend, I'll say, but I think he's got enough physicality to really solidify himself as a very high day 3 pick, if not a middle of the second round kind of guy.
All right, Kingsley Enagbare, edge, South Carolina. Now, I'm going to move away from the defensive line because, honestly, we can probably each pick 3 guys each that performed well this week on the defensive line, but I'm going to get off there. I'm going to mix it up a little bit. I'm going to go to the offensive side of the ball, and I'm going to go with Zion Johnson, offensive lineman, guard from Boston College, 6'2", 314, good arm length, good wingspan, all the goods that you look for. But what really stood out was this week he was one of the best run blockers in the whole Senior Bowl. When he was in there, the ball just moved differently. Okay, the holes opened up better on the inside. And he showed versatility with the ability to slide over to center. So you got a guy who can absolutely plug in at either guard spot, and now he could potentially start at center for a team if needed. And teams require offensive linemen that can play more than one position in today's NFL. Most of these teams aren't carrying more than 7 or 8 offensive line, 9 absolute max if they know they have a couple of guys who are injury prone or a guy already injured going into training camp or the regular season or whatever. So with that in mind, they want guys to play more than one spot. Zion Johnson made himself some money. I think we'll see him very clearly a solid second-round pick based on what we saw this week, his tape and everything else. If he has a good combine, he looks like a future Green Bay Packer to me or something like that.
They already have Allen Jenkins who can play tackle and guard. And frankly, Zion Johnson played right tackle in 2020. So he's got versatility all along the line. If he can play center, I think he legitimately could be one of the most versatile offensive linemen in the NFL. And maybe be a little bit similar to what Elijah Vera Tucker was last year, where it's this guy who could be a guard or a tackle and just kind of raises his draft value. So I think he could sneak into the first round, honestly, because there's not many guys with that kind of versatility in the league.
You had him in the first round in our mock draft last week. So.
Yeah, I did. I think he's going to be – I really think someone's going to fall in love with him there and say, I can play him almost wherever I want, and they're going to take him like that.
Yeah, that's why I said he's a firm second-round pick with the potential to rise. We know how high these offensive linemen go. And if there's a run in the first round, why not at the back end of the second? Plug them right in and go. Who is your third and final standout?
Man, this is rough because there's so many guys in the interior.
There's so many.
There's so many. There's 2 guys. There's 2 guys I will mention. Maybe we'll throw them in as honorable mentions at the very end. But I want to stay on the interior offensive line as well and give a shout out to someone who might fly on the radar a little bit. Dylan Parham from Memphis. He's their center basically. And this was a guy who I had, I think, outside the top 100 on my last big board because I'm looking at this dude listed at Memphis as a 285-pound center. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm not drafting a 285-pound center ever. I'm not touching that. It won't play in the NFL. It will not work. This dude came in and weighed in at 313.
Yep.
He had almost 30 pounds from the start of this collegiate season up until now. And you want to know what? It didn't affect his mobility whatsoever.
Not at all.
The dude is still one of the quickest and most agile linemen out there on the field. He still moves very well. And he actually showed a pretty good anchor. He had some wins against these bigger interior linemen, these great interior linemen we're talking about really raising their stock. He had wins against those guys. There were moments where he stonewalled great pass rushers. So I feel really good about him going forward. I think he'll probably be round 3, maybe top of round 4. It's not like he's going to be a second-round kind of guy. I don't even know if he's going to be a starter in year one. But I think he helped his draft stock significantly because he went from a guy who he can't really project being a starter in the NFL at any point in his career to a guy who now at 6'2", 313, a little bit on the squadier side, good leverage, good anchor, like I said, and good mobility. This is a dude who could be a projected star within the first 2 or 3 years of his career, which helps him out quite a bit.
All right. Yeah, I mean, you kind of surprised me on that one, but yeah, the size was a big question for him, like you said, during the season. 280, 285, but 315.
That'll play.
Sign me up. And he did have some struggles during the week with power, which could be a concern in the pros, but I think in an NFL weight room, he should be able to work on that.
Yeah, I think he'll adjust. And he did, like I said, he had some wins against these guys. I watched him a couple of times. Stonewall players who I thought would have been just throwing him around. And like I say, his real ability would probably be not just in like vertical pass drops, but if you get him in the running game, his ability to anchor, not necessarily anchor, but his ability to move around and get and seal holes and gaps, something we saw pretty significantly during the practices, during the full team drills. So I think that will be something that you could look at. Scheme is going to be probably a lot for him to really help him out. But overall, I think he really answered a lot of questions, at least I had going into this week.
All right. So, Parham. All right. And now for my final pick, I'm going to go. All right, I'm gonna do this, and then we're gonna each give an honorable mention because I'm a fiend, and the folks love mock drafts of sort like this. So my third standout, I'm gonna go with we need a wide receiver in Detroit, and some players had a really good week this week. There was a lot of good standouts at the receiver position. I'm gonna show some love to Christian Watson, North Dakota State wide receiver. He's a player that you were talking about on last week's show, and he is one of your favorites in this class, and I can see why. I can definitely see why. He showed that he belonged this past week. He had some big plays in practice. He's got great size at 6'4", 212 or 211. Sorry, and he showed the body control, hands to make an impact potentially in the league.
Yeah, with him, I think his big thing is going to be he's got a pretty clean release. Like for his size, you don't expect someone like that to move as fluidly as he does. And he's really good at high pointing the ball. He's got good hands. He catches away from the body. He'll extend up and just high point it. So I feel really good about him going forward. I don't think he'll be a first-round guy, but in this class where the receivers are really scrambled, could he be someone's wide receiver 5? I think that's a possibility, certainly.
Absolutely. So give me an honorable mention. Give me one guy that didn't quite make your cut for your top 3. But you want to show some love.
Yeah, I mean, I can't go any further without mentioning Periana Winfrey, man. And he was the biggest winner, I think, probably this weekend. The biggest standout. I think he actually was like the quote unquote MVP of the game itself. I mean, the dude looked unstoppable. Maybe not as quick and twitchy as someone like a Devontae Wyatt, but I think he was still tremendous. And it's a really deep class of defensive linemen that show up here, and he was by far the best in terms of just winning almost every single rep. He worked hard. Apparently, he had a lot of high energy out there. So the people who were actually there were saying he was making quite a bit of an impact and impression on them in between the practices, in between the drills. And his hand performance, how quick he was to balance the line, even his power being able to knock guys back, I thought it was really impressive.
It was just a matter of time before one of us mentioned him.
He had to get mentioned.
Finish this without talking about the kind of week that he had. Like you said, if aside from maybe Jermaine Johnson, Winfrey really helped his stock this
right
week.
Up there.
I think he's a lock for the first round at this point. He might even go in the top 20 if he shows up right at the combine.
I think the biggest issue we had in college was they were playing like a traditional nose tackle role at Oklahoma, which is really, I mean, it's weird looking back. I mean, this guy is 6'3", 303 pounds, and be honest, being able to play nose tackle at Oklahoma at that size is pretty impressive. But he's not going to play that role in the NFL. He'll get a lot more pressure. And he'll be a lot more of a destructive force once they get him in a real scheme that fits him.
So for me, again, boring, but I did talk about him last week, and I got to show my man some love. Logan Hall.
Yeah.
I mentioned him last week. He was someone I wanted to watch. Bit of a tweener. Wasn't really sure if he's going to be an edge guy. Is he going to be a D-line guy? Can he play in a 3-4 front at the end? Can he even play D-tackle? In a 4-3, It was, kind of mix and match there. Showed up at 6'5", almost 6'6", 278 pounds. Let's say 280, just round it up a little bit. Good arm length, good wingspan. And he showed some good consistency this week. He didn't show out like Johnson or Enigbare or Winfrey or Mafi. Jesus.
Boye Mafe, yeah.
Yes, from Minnesota. He didn't show out like any of these other guys, but he didn't have to, okay? I don't think he's going to be a first rounder like Peyton Turner was, former teammate at Houston, but the physical is there. And I like what I saw over the course of the week. And he had a lot of good wins in the one-on-ones. And I'm excited to see that translate to the next level. I don't think he's a tweener. I think he is a solid defensive line prospect. I think he can play in either front. I'd prefer him in a 4-3 base where he's play on the edge a little bit more. But you can move him inside and really lose nothing from him as an interior rusher. I got to show my man some love.
Really good swim move, by the way. He got 3 different guys with the swim move to get into the backfield in the one-on-one. So the fact he can do that 3 times against 3 different players, I think that's pretty consistent at this point. That's a good move for him to bring to the NFL.
Absolutely. So with that in mind, I think that pretty much wraps it up at this point. Let me just cycle through to see what chats we got here. So we got Marian Noy, Claveria Gabare. Well, hello, Maria Noy. Hola. And he said, España no entiendo. So he's Spanish and he doesn't understand English. Sorry, bud, this is the wrong football show. You're looking for football. So you were close, but not quite. Not quite correcto.
6 years ago, I might have been able to tell you what that said. Now I have no idea.
So with that in mind, I think we put a pretty bow on this. A little mock draft type Monday. Senior Bowl done in the books. Combine's next. In a month, yeah?
Yeah, just about, I think.
And we are both on Twitter. I'm on Instagram as well. Sam, what is your handle?
Yeah, you can follow me at Sam_Teets33 on Twitter, and you can check out the pin tweet. That's where my newsletter is with all my draft content, all my NFL content. We have some NBA content come out there too. So make sure you go check that out.
All right. And I am on Twitter. I am on Instagram. It is DB Talking Sports. D as in Dan, B as in Bob. Hit us with a subscription. Hit us with a like. Hit us with a follow. Hop in the DMs. We will respond. Don't you worry. And I'm excited for the rest of this draft process to unfold. I am going to be pumping out my first big board of the new year. I'm very excited for, and I'm also very nervous because just the kind of person I am, I will flip-flop and I will tinker and I will criticize my own board like I'm reading it for the first time. Like, what is this? What do you got this guy sitting there, third at this position? You suck. Just move him down 5 spots because I'm just repulsed with myself. I swear I'm my harshest critic. But I'm going to churn something out. It's going to be sexy. I'm going to have a mock draft coming out soon as well. Just all sorts of fun things. For Sam Teets, I'm Dan Kornhauser. Thank you guys for tuning in. Find us next week, same time, same place. Have a good night.